Hello, this is Evan Rogerson, and I'm MotorGang here, and today I'm going to break down the 0.2 game manual update. There's a couple important things that were changed, not anything like dramatically game changing that I haven't already covered, but let's go ahead and get into it. As always, I will on the left-hand side have the older version of the game manual, and the right-hand side will show the newer version of the game manual. Sorry that I'm a little bit later getting to this than usual, but I just got off work, and if you can't relate to that, jump scare. And going ahead and getting into it, we'll just get started off. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe in order to please the YouTube algorithm if you haven't already. And there's just some general things that they have here at the beginning. So there's a link to the obsolete version of the game manual, the point 0.1 version in this case, because now they have a 7-day grace period between game manual updates, so you can still go back and find them. The links usually still work for a while afterwards anyways, but it looks like they'll have a specific dedicated section anyways. And then just point two is just kind of a general thing. The English version of the manual is the most important one compared to all the other translations, which I mean, I guess makes sense. That's important to probably have one that's better than the others. But the GDC decided to get their linguistic skills out, as there's another reference to languages we'll get to later on in the update. So first change here, and this one doesn't affect gameplay, is the definition for lifting, which is a form of holding. Most people still call it trapping because that's what it used to just be called. It's where the ref goes 1, 2, 3, and if you get to 5, you get in trouble. And previously, lifting was basically like using a wedge to tilt the robot up off the tiles and get them off the ground. But now preventing a robot that is already off the floor from returning to the floor may also be considered lifting or trapping. My guess for this is if a robot is like in the park zone and they get off the ground, like while they're parking and they're just up on the perimeter, you can't keep them up there, which I guess makes sense. And it does probably make sense that if the robot's in their park zone, you can't just like hold them up there the entire time, especially for Vex U because teams will be parking during autonomous for Vex U autos. So it could be a strat to just like rush over and try and keep them parked on the ladder the whole match, or not ladder. Still thinking in high stakes. You know what I meant. But it does kind of feel a little bit weird that like if somebody's already stuck, you can't stop them from getting off because like if you get stuck in the first place, skill issue. But I think overall this is probably positive as if they're stuck, just leave them alone anyways. But oh well. Next up is just a small thing they added, so not including to the white tape lines. We already knew that because of whatever SC rule determined what the control bonus is, just making it extra clear that it's that green zone and not the white tape lines. The white tape lines do not count for whether or not something is considered in the control zone for the long goals. Next up we have block is considered scored. This is a good catch here. So the block has to be something the inside surface of the plastic trough of the goal, not just the inside surface of the goal. As the goal is just the entire structure, including the metal. So if a ball were held up against like a concave portion of the metal, which some of the supports do have, then that would be considered scored, assuming it's not touching the floor, or a robot of the same alliance color, which basically means you can only score for your opponents. But I guess this is a good little weird edge case thing of a block that wouldn't look like it's scored could be scored. So probably a good thing there. Now, next up, this one I saw some weird things because the Vex forum post kind of overviewing it said, clarify that devices are allowed in the alliance station but may not be used for any reason during a match. It's just straight up wrong because the Vex forum post is just this isn't true at all. Here's the rules side by side, so you can very clearly see the only thing that was changed is what is inside this red box. And all that they added is if communication features are needed for translation during post-match discussions, it should not be considered a violation. So the only thing they changed is you can take because your phone technically needs to be on airplane mode during a match. This is for two main reasons. One, just to help connections be better, because the more communication you have, the more likely there are to be disconnects. And number two is so you don't get outside sources. You can't have like on a phone call with somebody and they're telling you all the match by match plays you should be taking, or any like rules you need to be explaining to try and get the other team DQ'd at the end of the match. So basically they allow it so now you can use your phone, take it off of airplane mode and use that for translation, which I mean makes perfect sense and is a perfectly reasonable thing to have, but now it's just an official rule. But I don't know why the official post said this because this is just wrong. So just a small update here. If you do violate a rule during autonomous, in addition to automatically losing the autonomous bonus that was there before, you now also cannot get the autonomous win point, which yeah, I mean that makes sense. If you cheat, you shouldn't get the autonomous win point. There aren't really many cases of this where this could pop up, as last year really the only time I saw this come into play, other than crossing the line, was like possession limit if somebody over possesses during the match. But since there are no possession limits this year, I don't see this popping up too often. I mean, I guess maybe you could violate expansion on accident, but I can't really think of any things that you could very easily accidentally do if your auto messes up other than just completely crossing the line. Now, these are definitely the two biggest ones here is they did update the horizontal expansion, which I said they were going to do, and it's the exact same as what I said they were going to do up in my video. If you haven't already watched my video explaining and breaking this rule down, because we knew what this rule was in advance because they'd already put it in the head referee certification course and the inspection guides, click up here in the top right as that kind of goes through and breaks the entire thing down. And there were a couple things that I feel like didn't quite get across in that video that I want to go back through and further clarify is you can't just say G3 whatever. It's very clear that if your robot can start in a 22 by 22 by 22 sizing cube, it gets to play. Another thing people were kind of saying and yapping about is, well, why isn't this an issue for the 18-inch? Because yes, it is the same rule for the 18-inch starting size. The reason for that is because it's not really super viable for an 18-inch robot to fit within. Let me just pull up my calculator. They would have to fit in with roughly a 12.5 by 12.5 inch starting size in order to be able to fully expand, which is extremely restrictive. So you're not going to be starting in like 12 and a half inches by 12 and a half inches just to get a couple extra inches of expansion. There's no reason to do that. It's not strategically viable. But for here, with the 22 inches, all you have to do is fit in a 15.5 by 15.5 inch starting size, which some VRC robots are definitely going to start that small anyways, and all VexU 15-inch robots will start that small and be able to fully exploit the extra expansion you get from going at a 45-degree angle. So this definitely is a thing that will pop up for every single VexU 15-inch robot, and probably a decent number of VRC robots if they intentionally build their mindset around it. And then adding on to why it's not really as much of an issue with 18 by 18 is the starting tool is already 18 inches by 18 inches. It's really easy to measure 18 inches. 22 inches you don't have because a hypothetical 22 inch by 22 inch by 22 inch cubic sizing box is the only way to really measure this expansion. But event partners don't have 22-inch sizing tools. And if you're just like, okay, well, events just need to buy a sizing tool or make a sizing tool, that's one more thing that the event partner needs to do. And like there's no reason that if this were point to point, it wouldn't be extra work for the event partner. But now you're just making it more work for somebody to host an event and more work for referees to check an inspection. It's just more work with no real tangible benefit. So that's kind of the response there. But again, if you already haven't seen the video, do go ahead and click up in the top right there. And then they did still change it so it's 22 inches. You cannot exceed an overall height of 22 inches above the ground, which is quite important. As you can see in the previous version of the game manual, they have the pictures of these robots double parking. This top robot is clearly above 22 inches above the ground, which technically is an SG3 violation. So they did update it to here to show that both robots are not 22 inches above the ground. So if you are trying to like especially for VexU people trying to like drive up onto your partner, do keep in mind that it doesn't matter how tall your robot is, it still can't go 22 inches above the top of the field. Next one, and this is actually, I think, a really good change. So there's the four balls. You can kind of see them right there. And only two of them technically start over the line. So like that far blue ball right there is technically previously not accessible to red. But the problem is if red does anything that's going to move that blue ball at all, they automatically lose auto and give the other team the autonomous win point. So even if a red robot comes driving up, grabs that red ball, but because it's all touching, they kind of like bump these balls. And even if that ball just shuffles a little bit, automatic auto loss and AWP loss. But now, since these are all considered starting over the line, so even that ball is not starting over the line, legally it is now. So Red Robot could even go out and just grab that blue ball. So I think that's good because now you don't have to be super, super careful about not accidentally bumping the ball. You can just go out and grab all of these. It's also just kind of fun because, like, if Red wants their two balls and Blue wants their two balls, you can now try and, like, mess them up. So, like, you can very clearly just, like, go flying in and try and send those balls flying so the blue alliance, if they come in afterwards, can't try and get them. So I think that just makes auto kind of more fun, and overall, that's a very good change in my opinion, for a multitude of reasons. Moving on, we finally have SG9. They added point D. So if you match load and the ball falls out of the match loader because Vex sucks at designing fields, you're not going to be penalized for it, which makes sense. It is say incidentally bounce out of the loader, so you can't be trying to like put a bunch of spin on the balls to get them to bounce out. And I don't think you would want that strategically anyways, but I mean, yeah, I guess it's good. If Vex field sucks, you don't get punished. And biggest change of them all the other changes completely compale in comparison to this. In the previous version of the game manual, license plates cannot be mounted on parts of the robot that move. Your robot could not move. Now, As long as they are on parts of the robot that remain stationary on the robot, you can move. So you are now allowed to move your robot across the field, and license plates can't be mounted to something like a lift or rotating intake, flipping manipulator, whatever. So you can still, your robots can move now. I'm glad that they fixed that loophole. It's kind of funny. Also, just as I'm editing this, I noticed that a bunch of Q&As got answered, so I'll probably have a video coming out like sometime tomorrow going over all the Q&A changes that were made. I think that's going to be all for today. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, especially so you don't miss those future game manual updates, and I will see you in the next one.